I'm Madison, 35, and I discovered my husband's ultimate betrayal only after he was gone. For 15 years, I thought I knew Andrew completely. Then at his funeral, my own sister revealed that her 3-year-old son was actually his child. As she waved a supposed will in my face demanding half of everything we'd built, I felt my world collapse. The two people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. Yet somehow that devastating moment became the foundation for rebuilding a life more authentic than I ever thought possible. Before I share how I rebuilt my life from these ashes of betrayal, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to start over after someone you trusted broke your heart. Trust me, this story of betrayal, discovery, and ultimate redemption will be worth every minute. I met Andrew Hamilton during my first week at Lancaster Marketing in downtown Boston. I was 20, fresh out of college with my business degree, eager to prove myself in the competitive world of corporate marketing. He was 28, already an account manager with a reputation for landing difficult clients with his charm and strategic thinking. "You must be Madison Parker," he said, stopping by my cubicle with a warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "Welcome to Lancaster. If you need anything at all, my office is just down the hall." There was something about Andrew that drew people in. Tall, with kind blue eyes and a presence that made everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. He had a way of listening that made you feel truly heard, a rare quality that served him well both professionally and personally. Our romance developed slowly at first. Coffee breaks in the office kitchen. Casual lunch discussions about campaign strategies and client needs. Then one evening, working late on a major presentation, he asked if I'd like to grab dinner. "I know this great Italian place just around the corner," he said, loosening his tie as we gathered our papers. "Their pasta is incredible, and I think we both deserve a real meal after today." That dinner changed everything. Away from the office, Andrew was even more engaging. He asked about my dreams, my family, my background growing up in a small town outside of Springfield. He shared stories about his own childhood in Chicago, his move east for college, his ambitions to eventually start his own agency. "You're different from anyone else at Lancaster," he told me over tiramisu. "You have both the creative spark and the analytical mind. That's rare, Madison." 6 months later, we were dating openly, having disclosed our relationship to HR. A year after that, on a weekend trip to Cape Cod, he proposed on the beach at sunset. By 22, I was Madison Hamilton, married to a man 8 years my senior, who seemed to adore everything about me. The early years were a whirlwind of happiness. We bought our first home in Newton, a charming colonial with a garden I loved tending on weekends. Our careers flourished in tandem, Andrew becoming the youngest partner at Lancaster, while I steadily moved up the ranks in the creative department. My younger sister Natalie was a frequent visitor to our home. 3 years my junior, she had always been the free spirit of the family, artistic and somewhat impulsive. While I had followed a straight path through college to career, Natalie bounced between art school programs, retail jobs, and creative pursuits that never quite paid the bills. "You hit the jackpot with Andrew," Natalie would say during our sister nights curled up on my sofa with wine glasses in hand. "Seriously, does he have a clone hidden somewhere for me?" I would laugh, proud of my choice in husband and happy to have my sister's approval. Andrew was unfailingly kind to Natalie, offering career advice, helping her with her resume, even lending her money during her frequent financial crises. "Family is everything," Andrew would say when I occasionally worried about enabling Natalie's financial irresponsibility. "Your sister just needs time to find her footing. We're blessed to be in a position to help." By our 5th anniversary, we had settled into a comfortable routine. Work during the week, social events with friends and colleagues on weekends, annual vacations to increasingly exotic destinations. Andrew was still attentive, surprising me with thoughtful gifts and date nights. If he occasionally worked late or had weekend meetings, I never questioned it. His career was demanding, and I was busy building my own professional reputation. When Natalie went through a particularly bad breakup with her long-term boyfriend, Troy, in our 10th year of marriage, Andrew suggested she stay with us for a while. "She needs stability right now," he insisted. Besides, this house is too big for just us two anyway. Natalie lived with us for nearly 6 months. During that time, Andrew was particularly supportive, often staying up late talking to her in the kitchen after I had gone to bed, helping her process her feelings and plan her next steps. "You have no idea how much Andrew has helped me," Natalie told me one afternoon as we shopped for an outfit for her job interview. "I don't know how I would have gotten through this without both of you." I was touched by their bond, grateful that my husband and sister had such a close relationship. If sometimes they shared glances I couldn't quite interpret, or if their conversations occasionally stopped when I entered the room, I attributed it to them possibly planning surprises for my upcoming birthday. Natalie eventually found an apartment across town and a job at a local gallery. Our lives resumed their normal patterns, though Natalie remained a constant presence, joining us for Sunday dinners and family holidays. As we approached our 15th anniversary, I was made creative director at Lancaster, a position I had worked toward for years. Andrew was genuinely excited for me, throwing a surprise party with all our friends and colleagues. "To Madison," he toasted, raising his glass as everyone gathered around. "The most talented woman I know. Your success is well-deserved, and I couldn't be prouder to be your husband." Looking back, there were signs I chose to ignore. The late-night texts he would quickly put away when I entered the room. Business trips that seemed to multiply as the years passed. The growing emotional distance that I attributed to the natural evolution of a long marriage. The way he sometimes seemed to study me with an expression I couldn't quite define, as if he were making a difficult decision. But I was happy in my carefully constructed life, secure in what I thought was a solid marriage, blind to the storm that was about to break over my unsuspecting head. The bomb dropped on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday evening. I had just returned from a successful client presentation, still buzzing with adrenaline from landing a major account. Andrew was home early, sitting at our kitchen island, with a glass of whiskey, something unreadable in his expression. "We need to talk, Madison," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I think you should sit down." I remember the surreal feeling that washed over me as I took the seat across from him, still clutching my portfolio from the presentation. "I want a divorce," he said simply. No preamble, no cushioning. "I've given this a lot of thought, and I think it's for the best." The words hung in the air between us, incomprehensible at first. Andrew and I had never even discussed separation. We didn't have explosive fights or ongoing issues I was aware of. Just the previous weekend, we had been making plans for a summer trip to Greece. "I don't understand." I finally managed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Where is this coming from? Are you unhappy? Is there something I've done?" Andrew sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture I knew indicated discomfort. "It's not about anything you've done, Madison. I think we've just grown apart. We want different things now. We're on different paths." "Different paths?" I repeated. "What different paths?" "We've been building the same life together for 15 years. What changed?" But Andrew only offered vague platitudes. We had drifted apart. He needed space to figure things out. He thought it would be healthier for both of us to make a clean break. In the days that followed, I cycled through every emotion imaginable. Shock gave way to desperate bargaining. I suggested counseling, a trial separation, anything but the finality of divorce. Andrew agreed to one counseling session, sitting stiffly beside me as I tearfully tried to understand what had gone wrong. "Sometimes relationships just run their course," he told the therapist, avoiding my eyes. "Madison deserves someone who can give her what she needs. I'm not that person anymore." Anger followed quickly. One evening, I grabbed his phone when a text notification lit up the screen while he was in the shower. A message from someone saved simply as J read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," counting the hours. When confronted, Andrew didn't deny he was seeing someone else but refused to offer details. "It doesn't matter who she is, Madison. Our issues began long before she came into the picture." 15 years, Andrew," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't I deserve more than vague excuses and platitudes? What happened to the man who promised to love me forever?" "People change," he replied flatly. "I'm sorry, but my mind is made up." Eventually exhausted by the emotional roller coaster and Andrew's immovable stance, I moved into acceptance. If he wanted out so badly, fighting would only prolong the inevitable and preserve my dignity. Our divorce was quick and surprisingly amicable on paper. Andrew was generous with the settlement, leaving me our house in Newton and a fair division of assets. We had no children to complicate matters, and I kept my maiden name professionally, so the practical untangling of our lives was relatively straightforward. 2 months after that Tuesday night bombshell, I sat in our attorney's office signing the final papers that would end our marriage. Andrew sat across from me, his expression unreadable as the pen moved across page after page. When we finished, he stood and offered his hand formally, as if we were concluding a business deal rather than dissolving a 15-year marriage. "I wish you all the best, Madison," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I truly hope you find happiness." I took his hand, briefly studying the face I had woken up beside for a decade and a half now, somehow belonging to a stranger. "Goodbye, Andrew." That evening, my friend Diane insisted on taking me out for dinner, convinced I shouldn't be alone on what she called divorce finalization day. Halfway through our meal at a new bistro downtown, my phone buzzed with a text from another friend. "Just saw Andrew at Vincenzo's with a woman. Thought you should know." Vincenzo's, our favorite restaurant, where we'd had our first date, celebrated anniversaries, shared countless intimate dinners. The place Andrew had proposed we go for our upcoming 15th anniversary before blowing up our life instead. "I need to go," I told Diane, showing her the text. "Madison, no," she protested. "What good will that do? It's over. Don't torture yourself." But something in me needed to see, needed to know who had been worth throwing away 15 years of marriage. 20 minutes later, I walked into Vincenzo's, immediately spotting Andrew at our usual corner table. Across from him sat a stunning woman with long dark hair, laughing at something he said. As I approached, I realized with a shock that she couldn't be more than 25. They didn't notice me until I was standing directly beside their table. Andrew looked up, the smile freezing on his face. "Madison," he stammered, "what are you doing here?" I looked between them, taking in their clasped hands on the table, the bottle of champagne chilling beside them. The woman looked confused, then embarrassed, as realization dawned. "Congratulations on your freedom," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "I hope it was worth it." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. It was only in the safety of my car that I allowed the tears to come, great heaving sobs that felt as though they were being torn from the very center of my being. That night, alone in what had been our bed, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last night I spent crying over Andrew Hamilton. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of rebuilding my life without him. I had no idea how soon and how severely that resolve would be tested. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I had established a new routine. I threw myself into work, accepting additional responsibilities that kept me at the office late into the evenings. I joined a divorce support group that met on Wednesday nights, finding unexpected comfort in sharing experiences with others navigating the same painful journey. I started running in the mornings, pounding out my lingering anger and hurt on the pavement before dawn. The house in Newton still held too many memories, so I had begun the process of preparing it for sale, slowly packing away the life Andrew and I had built together. Each object, wedding gifts, vacation souvenirs, shared. Purchases required a decision. Keep, donate, discard. The physical sorting mirrored the emotional processing I was doing, separating what was worth preserving from what needed to be left behind. I had limited contact with Andrew to practical matters, only communicating through brief emails about outstanding bills or tax documents. He had moved in with his girlfriend Jennifer Weish, eventually learned was her name, immediately after the divorce, confirming my suspicions that their relationship had been going on for some time before our separation. Natalie had been surprisingly distant during this period, claiming work demands kept her too busy to help with my move or offer much support. When we did speak, she seemed uncomfortable changing the subject whenever Andrew's name came up. I attributed her behavior to the awkwardness many people feel around the newly divorced, unsure what to say or how to help. The call came at 11:37 p.m. on a Thursday night. I was in bed reviewing campaign materials for a meeting the next day when an unknown number flashed on my screen. "Is this Madison Parker?" an unfamiliar voice asked when I answered. "Yes, this is she," I replied, already feeling a sense of dread at the formal tone. "This is Nurse Reyes from Boston Memorial Hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact for Andrew Hamilton. There's been an accident, and you should come to the hospital right away." The drive to the hospital passed in a blur. Despite our divorce, despite the betrayal and pain, the thought of Andrew injured, possibly dying, sent waves of panic through my body. Whatever he had done, whatever had happened between us, we had shared 15 years of our lives. That connection couldn't be erased by legal papers or new relationships. At the hospital, I was directed to the intensive care unit, where a doctor in surgical scrubs met me with a grave expression. "Ms. Parker, I'm Dr. Lowry. Mr. Hamilton was in a single car accident on Route 95. He appears to have lost control of his vehicle and struck a concrete barrier at high speed. He sustained multiple traumatic injuries, including severe head trauma. We've done everything we can surgically, but I need to prepare you, the prognosis is not good." "Is he conscious? Can I see him?" I asked, struggling to process the information. "He's not conscious, and honestly, we don't expect him to regain consciousness. But yes, you can see him. Sometimes family members at the bedside can provide comfort, even if the patient cannot respond." Andrew was barely recognizable in the hospital bed connected to multiple machines, his face swollen and discolored. Standing beside him, I felt a complex surge of emotions: grief, anger, confusion, and a deep, unexpected sadness for what might have been. "I've called his girlfriend," I told the nurse who had accompanied me. "She should be here soon." "You're the only contact we had," she replied gently. "Would you like me to wait with you until she arrives?" But Jennifer never came. I learned later that they had broken up the week before another relationship that Andrew had apparently failed to sustain. I sat alone with Andrew through the night, watching the monitors, listening to the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator. In those quiet hours, I found myself talking to him, saying all the things I hadn't during our bitter divorce. "I don't understand why you left the way you did, Andrew. I don't understand why 15 years meant so little in the end. But I forgive you. I hope wherever you're going you find peace." Andrew Hamilton was pronounced dead at 5:17 a.m., never having regained consciousness. As his legal next of kin, we had completed the divorce, but he hadn't updated his legal documents. I was responsible for the arrangements. It was a bizarre, painful position to find myself in, planning the funeral of the ex-husband who had left me for another woman just months earlier. The memorial service was held at the same church where we had married, an irony that wasn't lost on me. I sat in the front row accepting condolences from colleagues and friends, many of whom seemed uncertain how to treat the ex-wife in this situation. Jennifer was noticeably absent, having apparently decided the brief relationship wasn't worth the public awkwardness of attending the funeral. Natalie arrived late, slipping into the seat beside me just as the service began. Her 3-year-old son Ryan sat quietly on her lap, unusually subdued in his little suit. I had only seen my nephew a handful of times since his birth, Natalie having become increasingly private about her personal life in recent years. "Sorry we're late," she whispered. "Ryan was fussy about wearing the tie." I nodded briefly, squeezing her hand, grateful for the family support despite our recent distance. The aftermath of the service was a blur of sympathy cards, casseroles dropped off by well-meaning neighbors, and administrative details. As Andrew's executor, I learned that he hadn't changed his will after our divorce. Legally, I remained the beneficiary of his life insurance policy and retirement accounts, as well as inheriting his personal possessions. This unexpected financial cushion brought a strange mixture of relief and guilt. The money would help with my fresh start, but it felt like profiting from tragedy. Still, as my therapist reminded me, Andrew had chosen not to update his beneficiaries. Whether oversight or intention, the result was the same. 3 days after the funeral, I hosted a small gathering at the Newton House for family and close friends, a more intimate memorial than the formal church service had allowed. My parents drove up from Springfield bringing food and quiet support. A few of Andrew's college friends came sharing stories of his younger days that made even me smile despite everything. Throughout the evening, I noticed Natalie becoming increasingly agitated. She checked her watch repeatedly, drank more wine than usual, and kept Ryan unusually close, where typically she would let him play with the other children present. As the gathering wound down and guests began to leave, Natalie approached me with a large manila envelope clutched in her hand. There was something in her expression, a combination of nervousness and determination that sent a chill through me. "We need to talk, Madison," she said quietly. "After everyone leaves. It's important." 2 hours later, the house was empty except for Natalie, Ryan, and me. My parents had offered to stay, but Natalie had pointedly suggested they return to their hotel, insisting that what she needed to discuss was private. We sat at the kitchen island, Ryan playing quietly with a toy car on the floor nearby. The manila envelope lay between us, still sealed. "What's going on, Natalie?" I asked, exhaustion from the emotionally draining day making my voice sharper than intended. "It's been a long day, and I'm not sure I have the energy for whatever this is." Natalie took a deep breath, her fingers drumming nervously on the envelope. "There's something you need to know about Andrew, about me, about Ryan." The way she glanced at her son sent a spike of unease through me. "What about Ryan?" "Andrew is Ryan's father." She said the words coming out in a rush. "We've been involved for years, Madison, since before Ryan was born." The room seemed to tilt around me, her words so unexpected, so impossible, that I couldn't process them immediately. "What are you talking about? That can't be true." With shaking hands, Natalie opened the envelope, spreading its contents across the counter. Photographs of her and Andrew together. Hotel receipts. Birthday cards with intimate messages. A DNA test report showing a 99.9% probability that Andrew Hamilton was the father of Ryan Michael Parker. And beneath it all, a handwritten document dated just weeks before Andrew's death, signed in what appeared to be his familiar scrawl. "In the event of my death, I leave half of all my assets, including the Newton property, to my son Ryan Michael Parker, to be held in trust until his 21st birthday." "He was going to tell you," Natalie said, her voice small but gaining strength. "After the divorce was final. We were planning to be together officially. He wanted to be a proper father to Ryan." I stared at the evidence before me, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. My husband, my sister, a 3-year-old nephew who was actually my husband's son. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating that I felt physically ill. "How long?" I managed to ask, my voice a whisper. 7 years, Natalie admitted, not meeting my eyes. "It started when I was staying with you after the breakup with Troy. Andrew was so supportive, so understanding. One night you were away at that marketing conference in Chicago." "Stop," I said, holding up a hand. "I don't need the details." Looking at Ryan now, I could see what I had somehow missed before. The shape of his eyes, so like Andrew's. The dimple in his right cheek when he smiled. The way he furrowed his brow in concentration as he played with his toy, a mannerism so familiar it made my heart ache. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, struggling to maintain composure. "Andrew is gone. What's the point of destroying what's left of my memories?" Natalie straightened, something hardening in her expression. "Because Ryan deserves his inheritance. Andrew wanted him to have it. This house, half of everything, it should go to his son." The calculated timing of her revelation struck me then. She had waited until after the funeral, until I had processed the estate details and learned I was the beneficiary. She had brought physical evidence and made her claim in the privacy of my home, away from the supporting presence of my parents or friends. "I need you to leave," I said, standing abruptly. "Take these things and go. I can't deal with this right now." "Madison, be reasonable," Natalie protested. "I'm not trying to hurt you. This is about what's right for Ryan." "Nothing about this is right." I snapped, anger finally breaking through the shock. Nothing about sleeping with your sister's husband for 7 years is right. Nothing about hiding his child is right. Nothing about ambushing me days after his funeral is right. Please just go. After a moment of tense silence, Natalie gathered the documents, returning them to the envelope. She collected Ryan and his toys, the little boy oblivious to the earthquake that had just devastated what remained of my world. At the door, she turned back. I'm sorry it came out this way, but we need to talk about this soon. Ryan deserves to know his father's family, and he deserves what Andrew wanted him to have. After they left, I sank to the kitchen floor, my legs no longer able to support me. The house I had shared with Andrew, the home I thought had been filled with love, despite its end, now felt contaminated by lies and betrayal. Every room potentially held memories of their deception. How many times had Andrew been with my sister while married to me? How many family gatherings had they shared? Secret glances over my oblivious head. How had I been so completely blind to what was happening in my own home with the two people I should have been able to trust above all others? That night alone in the guest bedroom, unable to face the master suite, I cried until there were no tears left, until exhaustion finally pulled me into fitful sleep. But before unconsciousness claimed me, I made a decision. I would not simply accept Natalie's claims and demands. I would investigate, verify, and protect myself from what could be yet another betrayal in a season already overflowing with them. Morning brought clarity and determination. After a night of turbulent dreams and broken sleep, I awoke with a sense of purpose that cut through the fog of shock and grief. Before responding to Natalie's claims, I needed facts, not emotions. I needed professional advice. My first call was to James Wilson, Andrew's attorney who had handled our divorce. His secretary initially tried to put me off, claiming his schedule was full for the week, but I insisted it was an urgent matter regarding Andrew Hamilton's estate. I can give you 15 minutes at lunch, James finally conceded when I refused to be deterred. In his downtown office, I placed the photocopies I'd discreetly made of Natalie's documents on his desk. James examined them carefully, his expression betraying nothing as he studied each page. First, let me offer my condolences on Andrew's passing, he said formally. This is an unusual situation, to say the least. Is this will valid? I asked, pointing to the handwritten document. James shook his head. No. Massachusetts doesn't recognize holographic wills unless they were executed in a state that does recognize them. Even if it did, this document doesn't meet the legal requirements. It's not witnessed or notarized, and the language is too vague to be enforceable. A small knot of tension released in my chest. And the DNA test could be legitimate, but would need verification through proper channels. This appears to be from one of those mail-order services, not a court-ordered test. He leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Hamilton. Parker, I corrected. I've gone back to my maiden name. Ms. Parker, then. I should inform you that Andrew never mentioned having a child to me either during your divorce proceedings or in updating his estate planning afterward. The last will we have on file leaves everything to you, and he did not make any changes following your divorce. So legally, you are the sole beneficiary and executor of his estate. If your sister wishes to make a claim on behalf of her son, she would need to file a paternity suit and petition the probate court. It would be a lengthy, expensive process with no guarantee of success. I left the meeting with a clearer understanding of my legal position, but still troubled by the moral implications. If Ryan truly was Andrew's son, did I have an obligation to him regardless of the circumstances of his conception? My next stop was less conventional. On the recommendation of a colleague who had gone through a contentious divorce, I contacted Franklin Delaney, a private investigator with a reputation for discretion and thoroughness. Frank turned out to be a former police detective in his 50s, with shrewd eyes and a matter-of-fact demeanor that I found reassuring. In a small office above a hardware store, I explained the situation, showing him the same documents I had shown James. I need to know if any of this is true, I concluded. About their affair, about Ryan's paternity, about Andrew's intentions. Frank took detailed notes, asking occasional clarifying questions. You understand this might uncover things you'd rather not know, he said finally. I've been living in ignorance for years, I replied. I need the truth, however painful. Over the next 2 weeks, I went through the motions of daily life like an automaton. I returned to work explaining my extended absence as bereavement leave, accepting condolences from colleagues who had no idea of the complexities involved. I continued sorting through the house now with the intent to sell it regardless of Natalie's claims. I avoided my sister's increasingly insistent calls and texts, telling her I needed time to process everything before discussing arrangements. Frank called with updates every few days. He had confirmed Andrew and Natalie had shared a secret email account, using it to coordinate meetings over the years. He had located a small apartment Andrew maintained across town, apparently for their rendezvous. He was working on accessing Andrew's financial records to trace any support payments or gifts to Natalie and Ryan. 3 weeks after the funeral, Frank requested a meeting in person. I have comprehensive findings, he said, his tone giving nothing away. You should hear this directly, not over the phone. In his office, he presented a bound report several inches thick. I've organized this chronologically, he explained, opening to the first tab. The relationship appears to have begun as your sister claimed during her stay at your home 7 years ago. There are hotel charges on Andrew's credit card from that period that correspond with times you were traveling for work. I nodded, the confirmation somehow both painful and oddly validating. I hadn't imagined or exaggerated the betrayal. The affair continued intermittently over the years, with periods of greater and lesser intensity. Based on the timeline, it's certainly possible that Andrew is Ryan's biological father, though I'd recommend a court-approved DNA test to confirm. And the will his intentions. Frank's expression darkened. This is where it gets complicated. Andrew wasn't just having an affair with your sister. He flipped to another section of the report, revealing evidence of multiple relationships Andrew had maintained throughout our marriage. A paralegal at his firm, a client's marketing director, a woman who taught at the gym where he worked out, and most recently, Jennifer, the young woman who had precipitated our divorce. Andrew was living well beyond his means for the past several years. Frank continued showing me financial statements. He had accumulated significant gambling debts. There were loans taken against your house that don't appear to have been disclosed during your divorce. The picture emerging was of a man I barely recognized. Not just an unfaithful husband, but a serial cheater. Not just financially generous, but recklessly irresponsible with money. What about Natalie? Did she know about the others? There's no evidence she knew about most of them, but she was certainly aware of Jennifer. In fact, Frank hesitated. Please just tell me everything. In the weeks before Andrew's death, there were heated exchanges between them. Natalie was pressuring him about making their relationship public and officially acknowledging Ryan. Andrew was resistant. His final message to her, sent the night of his accident, suggested he was ending things with her as well. The revelation hit me with unexpected force. If Andrew had been planning to cut ties with Natalie, not build a future with her, it cast her entire story in a different light. So she lied about their plans to be together. It appears so. And there's one more thing you should know. Frank turned to the final section of the report. Your sister is in significant financial trouble. She's behind on rent, has maximal credit card debt, and received an eviction notice the week before Andrew's funeral. The timing of her claim on his estate corresponds exactly with her financial crisis coming to a head. I sat back, trying to absorb all of it. The man I had loved and built a life with had been living a double, no, a triple or quadruple life all along. My sister had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible, and now appeared to be using that betrayal to solve her financial problems. And in the middle of it all was a 3-year-old boy, innocent of his parents' sins but inextricably part of this tangled web. What would you do? I asked Frank, surprising myself with the question. The investigator considered thoughtfully. Professionally, I can only present the facts, not advise on actions. And personally, he closed the report, choosing his words carefully. Personally, I'd say there are 2 separate issues here. Your sister's claims and behavior, and your responsibility, if any, to her son. Whatever you decide about one doesn't necessarily dictate your approach to the other. I left with the comprehensive report, my mind churning with possibilities. That night I called James Wilson again, this time with a very specific set of questions about trust's inheritance law and conditions that could be legally attached to financial gifts. Over the next few days, a plan began to form. Not driven by revenge or anger, though those emotions still surged through me at unexpected moments. Rather, a plan that would protect me while acknowledging the complex reality of the situation. A plan that would address both the adult betrayal and the innocent child caught in its aftermath. When I finally responded to Natalie's increasingly desperate messages, my reply was brief and firm. "I'm ready to talk. Come to the house tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone." Natalie arrived precisely at 2, her normally confident demeanor subdued as she entered the home where we had once been family. I had purposefully arranged the meeting in the formal living room, a space less laden with personal memories than the kitchen or den. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she began, settling nervously on the edge of the sofa. "I know this has been a lot to process." "More than you can imagine," I replied, my voice steady. "I've spent the last month learning things about Andrew, about you, about the life I thought I was living that have fundamentally changed how I see the past 15 years. I placed Frank's report on the coffee table between us, along with a folder containing legal documents prepared by James Wilson. Natalie's eyes widened slightly at the thickness of the materials. "What is all this?" "Evidence," I said simply. "Of Andrew's multiple affairs, including but not limited to the one he had with you. Of his gambling problems and financial mismanagement. Of the timing of your claim corresponding exactly with your eviction notice and maxed-out credit cards." The color drained from Natalie's face. "You had me investigated. Did you really expect me to take your word after discovering you'd been sleeping with my husband for 7 years?" I asked, unable to keep a note of bitterness from my voice. "After you ambushed me days after his funeral with demands for his estate." "It wasn't like that," she protested weakly. "I waited until after the funeral out of respect." "Out of calculation," I corrected. "You waited until you knew I had been named beneficiary. You waited until our parents were gone. You chose your moment for maximum impact and minimum interference." Natalie looked away, unable to maintain eye contact in the face of these truths. "Whatever my timing, Ryan is still Andrew's son. He deserves—" "I know he's Andrew's son," I interrupted. "The resemblance is obvious now that I'm looking for it. I don't dispute the biological connection. What I dispute is your version of events and your claims about Andrew's intentions." I opened the report to a flagged section showing her the final messages between her and Andrew. "He was ending things with you, Natalie, not planning a future together. The night he died, he was driving away from meeting you where he had told you it was over." Tears filled her eyes. "That's not true. He loved me. He just needed time to figure things out after the divorce." "He told Jennifer the same thing," I said quietly. "And probably the others too. Andrew was a liar, Natalie. To me, to you, to everyone in his life. We both fell for it, just at different times and in different ways." The reality of this seemed to hit her for the first time. She had been so focused on positioning herself as the chosen woman, the true love, that she hadn't considered she might be just another in a line of deceptions. "The handwritten will isn't legally valid." I continued addressing the practical matters. "Massachusetts doesn't recognize holographic wills. Even if it did, this one wasn't properly executed. The official will on file leaves everything to me." "So you're just going to take everything?" Natalie asked, anger flaring through her tears. "Deny your own nephew his father's legacy." I didn't say that. I opened the folder of legal documents. "I've spent the past week consulting with attorneys about the best approach to this situation. Here's what I'm prepared to offer." I laid out the terms clearly. I would establish a trust fund for Ryan's education and future needs, with a significant initial deposit and regular contributions. I would maintain ownership of the house and other assets, but ensure Ryan would be provided for through college and beyond. "There are conditions," I added, sliding a document toward her. "You will sign a legal statement retracting any claim that Andrew intended to leave his estate to Ryan. You will acknowledge that the handwritten document was not legally binding, and you will agree to family counseling for all of us, including Ryan, when he's old enough to address the damage this situation has caused. Natalie stared at the papers, conflict evident in her expression. And if I refuse, if I take this to court, then I will contest it with every resource at my disposal, I said firmly. I will introduce evidence of Andrew's other affairs, his financial improprieties, and your precarious financial situation as motivation for your claims. It will be expensive, protracted, and painful for everyone, especially Ryan. And based on my attorney's assessment, you would likely lose. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of years of deception and betrayal hanging between us. Why would you do this for Ryan? Natalie finally asked. After what Andrew and I did? Because none of this is Ryan's fault, I replied simply. He's an innocent child who deserves security and support. My issues with his parents are separate from his needs. Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks. I never meant to hurt you, Madison. It just happened, and then it kept happening, and eventually I didn't know how to stop or come clean without destroying everything. I wasn't ready to offer forgiveness or absolution, the wounds still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. But I recognized the complexity of the situation, the human frailty that had led us all here. We have a lot of work to do if we're ever going to move past this, I said instead. It won't happen quickly or easily, but for Ryan's sake, I'm willing to try if you are. Natalie nodded, wiping away tears. I'll sign the agreement, and I'll do the counseling. I want to make things right however possible. As she signed the documents, I felt no triumph or vindication. Only a sad recognition that we were all victims of Andrew's deceptions in different ways, left to rebuild from the wreckage of his lies. After Natalie left, I stood alone in the house that had witnessed so much love and betrayal. For the first time since learning the truth, I felt something like peace beginning to form around the jagged edges of my pain. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward it. I made a decision then, standing in that space filled with ghosts. I would sell the house, use the proceeds to start fresh somewhere new, not running away from the past, but consciously choosing to build a future unencumbered by its shadows. As painful as the truth had been, it had set me free in unexpected ways. Free from doubt and confusion. Free from the nagging sense that I had somehow caused Andrew's dissatisfaction. Free ultimately to reimagine a life built on authenticity rather than deception. The path ahead would be difficult, particularly rebuilding some form of relationship with Natalie and forging a connection with Ryan. But I was stronger than I had known, more resilient than I had believed. And perhaps most importantly, I was finally standing on solid ground, no longer living in the quicksand of others' lies. 1 year after Andrew's death, I had rebuilt my life in ways I never imagined possible. I sold the Newton house, using part of the proceeds to purchase a comfortable condo in Cambridge, close enough to maintain my position at Lancaster, but in a neighborhood where memories of my past life didn't lurk around every corner. The process of healing had been neither quick nor linear. There were days when grief ambushed me unexpectedly, not just for Andrew, but for the marriage I thought I had, for the sister relationship that had been irreparably altered, for the future I had once planned so carefully. On those days, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of the loss, no longer fighting against the pain, but moving through it instead. Therapy had been essential to my recovery. My therapist, Dr. Mercer, specialized in complex grief and betrayal trauma. She helped me understand that mourning a relationship that had been revealed as partly fictional was particularly challenging, requiring me to integrate two contradictory narratives: the loving husband I had believed in and the unfaithful man who had led a double life. "You're mourning two distinct losses," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "The actual death of Andrew and the death of the relationship you thought you had. It's completely normal to feel confused about which one you're grieving at any given moment." Work provided structure and purpose during those difficult months. I had been promoted to executive creative director at Lancaster, ironically filling the position Andrew had once coveted. The demanding role kept my mind engaged during the day, though evenings and weekends sometimes stretched before me with uncomfortable emptiness. Slowly, I began rebuilding my social connections. I joined a book club that met monthly in a local cafe. I took a weekend photography course, rediscovering a passion I had set aside years before. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted away during my marriage, finding unexpected comfort in these renewed relationships. The most complicated aspect of my new life was navigating the fragile, evolving relationship with Natalie and Ryan. As promised, we attended family therapy sessions twice a month, working through layers of hurt, betrayal, and misunderstanding. Progress was uneven, with breakthroughs followed by setbacks, moments of connection interrupted by flares of anger or resentment. Ryan, now 4, knew me simply as his Aunt Madison, who sometimes took him to the Children's Museum or the park. He was too young to understand the complex adult dynamics surrounding his existence, and I was determined to protect him from that knowledge for as long as possible. Whatever my feelings about his parents' choices, he remained an innocent party deserving of love and stability. Natalie had made significant changes in her own life. With financial counseling arranged as part of our agreement, she had secured a more stable position at an art gallery and moved to a better apartment. She attended therapy consistently, working to understand her own patterns and motivations in the affair with Andrew. Our relationship remained tentative and sometimes strained, but we were both committed to finding a way forward for Ryan's sake. The trust fund for Ryan was established and growing, ensuring he would have educational opportunities and a financial foundation, regardless of what happened between his mother and me. It gave me a strange comfort to know that something positive would come from the painful situation, that Andrew's son would benefit from his father's estate, even if not in the way Andrew might have intended. It was at a gallery opening for one of Natalie's exhibitions that I met Michael Ellison. He was a pediatric surgeon at Boston Children's Hospital, attending the event with mutual friends. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-framed glasses, he had a calming presence that immediately put people at ease. "You must be Madison," he said, extending his hand when our friends introduced us. "I've heard wonderful things about you." "All exaggerations, I'm sure," I replied with a small smile, surprised to find myself actually engaging in light social banter after months of just going through the motions. "I doubt that very much," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. "Sarah tells me you're the creative genius behind the Children's Hospital rebrand. The new materials have made a real difference for our families. Kids actually get excited about coming in for treatments when they see those characters." We spent the next hour discussing the marketing campaign I had developed for the hospital, Michael offering insights from the medical staff perspective that I found genuinely fascinating. When the conversation naturally wound down, he hesitated briefly before speaking again. "I know this might be forward, but would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd enjoy continuing our conversation." My immediate instinct was to decline. After everything I had learned about deception and betrayal, the thought of opening myself to potential hurt again seemed foolish. But something about Michael's straightforward manner and genuine interest gave me pause. "I should probably tell you that I'm a widow," I said, choosing the simplest explanation for my complicated situation. "It's been a difficult year, and I'm not sure I'm ready for anything complicated." Michael nodded, his expression understanding rather than deterred. "I lost my wife to cancer 3 years ago," he said quietly. "I understand complicated grief better than most. Coffee doesn't have to mean anything beyond two people who've both experienced loss sharing conversation." That first coffee led to a second, then a lunch, then a proper dinner. Michael's approach was refreshingly direct and unhurried. He spoke openly about his late wife, Catherine, their 20-year marriage cut short by aggressive breast cancer, his journey through grief and gradual return to living rather than just existing. In turn, I found myself sharing pieces of my own story. Not all at once, and not the full complexity immediately, but more than I had with anyone outside my therapist's office. Michael listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions, offering insights from his own experience with loss. "The hardest part," he said during one evening walk along the Charles River, "is learning to trust again. Not just others, but yourself. Trusting your own judgment after it's been so profoundly shaken." "Exactly." I agreed, relieved to have my feelings so perfectly articulated. I keep second-guessing everything. How did I not see who Andrew really was? What did I miss? What else am I missing now? Catherine and I had a saying during her illness, Michael offered. Control what you can accept, what you can't, and know the difference. You couldn't control Andrew's choices. You can only control how you move forward. 6 months into our cautious, developing relationship, I finally shared the full truth about Andrew, Natalie, and Ryan. We sat on my condo balcony on a mild spring evening, and I told him everything: the affairs, the financial deceptions, the posthumous revelation about Ryan, the complicated arrangement I had worked out with my sister. When I finished, Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing the tangled story. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he finally said, reaching for my hand. "It can't have been easy to share." "I needed you to know," I replied. Before this goes any further, it's a lot of baggage to take on." "Everyone has baggage by our age," Michael said with a gentle smile. "It's just a matter of whether you're willing to help each other carry it. And for what it's worth, I think the way you've handled the situation with your nephew shows extraordinary compassion and strength." As our relationship deepened, Michael became a steady, supportive presence in my rebuilt life. He understood my need for independence after years of discovering my marriage had been built on lies. He respected my complex family dynamics and never pressured me to simplify my relationship with Natalie or Ryan for his convenience. On the first anniversary of Andrew's death, I visited the cemetery alone, standing before the simple headstone with complicated emotions swirling through me: anger, sadness, lingering confusion, and underneath it all, a strange sense of gratitude for the painful truths that had ultimately set me free. "I never knew you," I said quietly to the granite marker. "Not really, but I'm learning to know myself again, and for that I suppose I should thank you." That evening, Ryan's 5th birthday party marked a milestone in the healing process for our fractured family. Natalie had invited me to her apartment for a small celebration, the first time she had included me in one of Ryan's special occasions. My parents were there as well, having gradually come to terms with the shocking revelations about their daughters and former son-in-law. Watching Ryan blow out his candles surrounded by people who loved him despite the circumstances of his birth, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The situation would never be simple or conventional, but we were finding our way towards something that worked, something that put Ryan's well-being at the center, while allowing the adults around him to heal at their own pace. Later that week, Michael and I had dinner at his favorite neighborhood restaurant, a cozy Italian place with red checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. Over tiramisu, he reached across the table for my hand. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said at Ryan's party," he began, "about how families come in all forms, and what matters is the love and honesty between people, not the conventional structures." I nodded, remembering the conversation with my mother as we had watched Ryan opening presents. "It made me realize something important," Michael continued. "I've been hesitant to talk about the future because I didn't want to pressure you, knowing everything you've been through. But I love you, Madison. I love the life we've been building together, and I would like to keep building it whatever form it takes." "Are you proposing?" I asked, my heart suddenly racing. He smiled. "Not exactly, or at least not a traditional proposal. I'm proposing possibility. I'm saying I'm all in whenever and however you're ready. No rush, no pressure, just a promise that I'm here and I want to be part of whatever comes next for you." Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound relief of being truly seen and accepted. This man understood that my journey was ongoing, that trust came harder to me now that conventional romantic gestures might trigger painful memories. And he had found a way to offer commitment while honoring where I was in my healing process. "I love you too," I said, squeezing his hand. "And I want you to be part of whatever comes next. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but I'm ready to figure it out together." As we left the restaurant, walking hand in hand beneath a canopy of spring stars, I reflected on the winding path that had led me here. A year ago, I had stood in the wreckage of my former life, surrounded by betrayal and lies, uncertain if I would ever feel whole again. Now I was building something new, not perfect, not without complications, but authentic in a way my life with Andrew had never been. My relationship with Michael was founded on honesty and mutual respect. My connection with Ryan was developing on its own terms, separate from the adult complexities surrounding his existence. Even my damaged relationship with Natalie was slowly evolving into something that, if not entirely healed, at least acknowledged the truth of our shared history. The most profound change, though, was within myself. I had discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. I had learned to trust my instincts again, to set boundaries, to prioritize truth over comfortable illusions. I had found the courage to rebuild not just the external structures of my life, but my internal landscape as well. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to the most authentic life. Not because the betrayal itself has value, but because surviving it requires a level of self-knowledge and strength that might otherwise remain undiscovered. In losing what I thought was my life, I had found something more valuable myself. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to a better life path? How do you balance forgiveness with self-protection when dealing with family who've hurt you deeply? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If my journey of healing after betrayal resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming life's toughest challenges. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the most devastating betrayals. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth is never determined by how others have treated you.